Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're setting out on a super fascinating journey to take what is often, frankly, pretty dense academic psychology and transform it into a highly practical, empowering playbook for modern educators. Whether you're a seasoned teacher, an education student, or honestly just someone curious about how the human mind actually acquires knowledge, This Explainer is designed to give you some really structured, actionable insights. We're going to look at the absolute foundation of how we learn, and then build all the way up to how we can effectively manage a fast-paced 21st century classroom. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the science of learning, then look at from teacher to facilitator. Next up, we'll explore the 4 pillars of education, move straight into strategies for active learning, and finally wrap the whole thing up with integrating classroom technology. Starting us off, Section 1, the science of learning. Understanding knowledge acquisition. Let's really hook our brains here with an actual question pulled straight from a teacher licensure exam. How can new information be made more meaningful to students? Think about that for just a second. Well, the answer, based entirely on cognitive learning principles, is relating it to knowledge they already have. Sometimes this is called apperception. Connecting brand new data to prior knowledge creates a holistic view in the mind, and it's absolutely the key to making information stick. So the really crucial point here is getting students to understand their own mental pathways, which brings us to metacognition. This is literally thinking about cognition. It involves both explicit, factual knowledge and that sort of implicit, unconscious knowledge of how you personally learn best. Now you might be wondering, why does this matter? Well, because when students can actually control their thinking by organizing, monitoring, and adapting, they build real learner autonomy and genuine independence. It's a total game changer. Let's look at how the brain actually builds these connections through Edward Lee Thorndike's connectionism. He proposed that human activity is essentially based on a stimulus-response bond. Now, he laid out 3 specific laws here. First, the law of readiness, which just means a person has to be prepared for action. Mindset totally matters. Then there's the law of exercise, showing that drill, practice, and repetition actively strengthen the connection in the brain cortex, while disuse weakens it. And finally, the law of effect. This one states that satisfying, pleasant results strengthen a behavior, while annoying or negative results weaken it. Makes sense, right? And all of this brilliantly illustrates the core behaviorist perspective, which is so famously summarized by John Watson's quote, "Men are built, not born." It's just a really powerful reminder that as educators, the environment we curate can literally build the capabilities of our students from the ground up.
Moving right along to Section 2, from teacher to facilitator, a true paradigm shift.
Here is another Socratic question to test our understanding. The environment, in order to facilitate learning, must be interactive. Which scenario best typifies this? Think about it. Is it a child sitting there listening to a lecture on fossils, or a child going outside and discovering a rock or fossil for themselves? Obviously, it's the latter. The ultimate interactive environment is active discovery. A child out there discovering a fossil engages their senses and actively constructs their own knowledge. Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark contrast between these 2 educational models. In teacher-centered education, what we sometimes call the sage on the stage, students mostly just listen. Sure, it keeps the classroom orderly and ensures you don't miss any curriculum topics, but let's be real, it can be pretty boring, and students aren't learning vital communication skills. On the flip side, in student-centered education, the guide on the side, teachers and students interact equally. This fosters incredible collaborative and communicative skills through group work. Though, fair warning, it might occasionally get a bit noisy. To actually be that guide on the side, we rely heavily on a concept from Vygotsky's social constructivism called scaffolding. This is the systematic manner of providing assistance to learners by a more knowledgeable other, which could be a teacher or even just an advanced peer. Basically, the teacher acts as a temporary support system, providing judicious, perfectly timed assistance, and as the student gains mastery and independence, well, that scaffolding is gradually removed so they can stand on their own.
All right, Section 3, the 4 pillars of education. Building a complete person.
Let's challenge ourselves again with a quick thought experiment. If a teacher heavily emphasizes transforming knowledge into innovations in job creation, what pillar is being promoted there? Think about the highly practical application of knowledge. If you guessed learning to do, you hit the nail on the head.
So here is the whole shebang, the 4 pillars in full. Learning to know is all about developing memory, concentration, and those core instruments of understanding, basically learning how to learn. Learning to do represents the creative, skillful application of that knowledge to deal with real-world situations and work effectively in teams. Learning to live together is absolutely vital. It's about building a culture of peace, understanding others, and handling our emotions. And finally, learning to be. This pertains to the overall, holistic development of the human person, achieving physical, intellectual, emotional, and ethical integration. Education just has to move beyond rote memorization to hit all 4 of these marks.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, Strategies for Active Learning, Methods in the Classroom.
Consider this for a second. Which teaching method is intended primarily for skill and concept mastery by way of practice? The answer is the drill. Now, I bring this up because yes, while we all love modern, highly interactive environments, sometimes traditional methods like drills, supervised study, and direct instruction are still absolutely necessary for specific skill mastery. You can't skip the basics.
When you do go with direct instruction, it requires a lot of structure. Here are the first 3 crucial steps you need to take. Step 1, review previously learned material. Check homework, reteach things if you need to. Step 2, clearly state the objectives for the lesson, so your students know exactly what is about to happen. And step 3, present the new material. But notice the flow here. You always want to organize content from the general to the specific, and from lower-level objectives to higher-level ones. It builds a steady ramp for the student.
Now, as we present this new material, we really have to understand how knowledge transfers from one context to another. Near transfer happens when the original learning context and the new context are very similar. Far transfer is when they're totally different. But actually, think about positive and negative transfer for a second. Positive transfer is when what you learned yesterday actively helps you learn something new today. Conversely, negative transfer is when your prior learning actually gets in the way and hinders your ability to pick up new knowledge. It's wild, but past experiences are incredibly powerful for better or worse. And to guarantee that positive transfer and really drive active learning, we can use the 4 A's framework of facilitating learning. Those 4 A's stand for activity, analysis, abstraction, and application. The number 4 here is key because it reminds us that activity is always the crucial first step. You start by engaging the learners in a hands-on activity, then you analyze what just happened, abstract the general overarching ideas from it, and finally apply that new understanding to a totally new situation.
All right, final stretch. Section 5, Integrating Classroom Technology, the Modern Arsenal.
Let me throw a slightly surprising question your way. What is the most traditional but still very effective technology in the classroom? See, we hear the word technology and our brains immediately jump to laptops and iPads. But the real answer, it's the chalkboard or the blackboard. Remember, at its core, technology is simply any tool or resource that facilitates the learning process. Horace Mann, a legendary American educator, hit the nail on the head here way back in the day. He said, "Indeed, in no country have I ever seen a good school without a blackboard or a successful teacher who did not use it frequently." The foundational purpose of classroom tools literally hasn't changed since man's time, only the medium has evolved.
But wow, how that medium has evolved. Today, we have a massive arsenal of modern tools right at our fingertips. Rapid fire here. We've got class blogs and wikis for collaborative writing. We have wireless classroom microphones so every kid in the back can hear clearly and the teacher doesn't lose their voice by Friday. Mobile devices and clickers give us instant, real-time feedback. Interactive whiteboards let students physically manipulate images. And digital video on demand brings the entire world into the classroom in seconds. All these tools shift the computer from just being a fancy typewriter into the role of a tutor and a genuine learning partner. Which brings us to this incredibly essential constructivist perspective. Technology serves as an intellectual partner. It absolutely shouldn't just be used to passively deliver facts. It should actively engage our learners in complex problem solving, help them articulate what they know, compare different perspectives, and ultimately construct personal meaning. It's a social medium for collaborating and a high-speed vehicle for exploring. So we've covered the science of the mind, the 4 pillars of a holistic education, active teaching strategies, and the incredible power of modern technology. I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Are you ready to step away from being the sage on the stage and truly become the guide on the side? The tools and the theories are right there in your hands. Now it's time to go out there and empower your students. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.